Hi, thank you very much for coming. My name is Andrew Moore. I am the new Dean of Computer Science, School of Computer Science here. I am absolutely delighted to see so many people who've come here for this, the final, and I'm sure the most awesome of all the panel sessions and events we've been doing as part of Cayley Weekend. So thank you very much for coming here. I want to quickly tell you about four things that I have learnt during my first 8 weeks here at the School of Computer Science about what people care about here. And it leads into why we're doing this panel. Thing number one, people care about the School of Computer Science, and they've over and over again had people telling me this because it's where they grew up. It's so many of the people who are here today, so many people throughout the world, they grew up, they learned how to work, how to trust other people, how to get things done by being here. Secondly, people care about this place because it's brutalized them in the sense that it actually taught us all that we have to work hard. And so we're not like embarrassed or all kind of West Coasty about the fact that we work hard here. And that's very good. Sorry. My mic will shortly be shut off. Third thing, people really care about this place because of the things that are going on here all the time, and the science and technology that I've sort of been able to get a fresh look at, having returned to CMU after an 8-year absence, seeing what's happening. I keep meeting people who have thought of creative things with teams of brilliant students which are now saving lives. They're systems, technologies which are deployed, saving lives. Technologies which are deployed, making life, making education, making people's way of life better. And that's another reason, I think, why everyone has got this sort of outpouring of good wishes for Carnegie Mellon and its School of Computer Science. The fourth thing is why we're here today. There's a real culture here that none of us are really satisfied, and we all are here because we're thinking about what happens in the future. And one of the things I love about Carnegie Mellon is it's not just that it's fun to be building the future, of course it is, but we actually feel like there are not a whole lot of places in the world which make sure that the year 2040, 25 years from now, is a lot better, safer, more comfortable, funner, meaningful place to live. And we here have an opportunity to actually do that. So instead of just saying it's fun to have that opportunity, here at Carnegie Mellon, I think we also feel a sense of earned responsibility for it. So having agreed that we like this responsibility for the next 25 years of the future, we really do need to debate amongst all of us, how should those 25 years go? What are the big risks? What's going to be exciting? And the person we've asked, who's kindly come across the country from that West Coast place to help us think about this, is someone who I respect as being one of the most visionary leaders that I've worked with in computer science, Peter Lee.
Thank you. I have to get used to saying thank you, Dean Moore. And it's actually amazing to me that as Carnegie Mellon Computer Science enters a new era, that it's again associated with the name Andrew. There's something really fitting about that. And thanks to everyone here for inviting me to be with you today. It's just really something I'm very excited about. Really, for all of the reasons that Andrew just expressed, I'm just incredibly proud, more than I can really express, incredibly proud of my association with Carnegie Mellon and with the School of Computer Science. You know, I was asked to say a few words just to reflect on my experiences since leaving Carnegie Mellon, and it has been interesting. I had the chance to transition from an academic environment to a government agency, DARPA, and then from DARPA to a major industrial research lab at Microsoft Research. And it has been a very interesting experience. I sometimes get told that I go to one cat herding job after another, although I think only the cats at DARPA ever saluted to me. Never seemed to happen here, at least. But the thing I wanted to say is that as I reflect on those transitions, the thing that has really struck me, and I really appreciate having had the chance to think about this by being here, is how the intellectual foundations and the broad perspective on computer science and also the devotion to the core values of the importance of basic research that I gained from my 23 years here, how they have really endowed me with what I believe are really unfair advantages in each of these places and have helped me to be more successful, have helped me to be more grounded and to look different and stick out more, and also just to have more fun everywhere I've gone. And so for all of those reasons and more, I really just feel I owe a great debt to Carnegie Mellon, and I'll always forever be devoted to the place. And so thank you for that really irreplaceable set of advantages. And I count on all of you here to keep that going, because I'm going to keep harping on Carnegie Mellon, my connections, so I expect it to keep being great. So enough about me. We're supposed to be here for a panel discussion on the next 25 years. And what a crazy thing. 25 years. I was talking to Paul earlier, and he had the same thought. It's just impossible to think ahead 25 years. And so the best that you can do is try to look back 25 years and from that experience project forward. And so, of course, I did a little bit of that. So to give you an idea, so the Linux project, if you are an OS person, hadn't yet started. It's still a couple of years off. A company called Motorola just joined Fairchild and Sun and MIPS and IBM in the RISC revolution. That was just really hot back then. There was no World Wide Web or web browsers. In fact, it was still another year or two before Tim Berners-Lee would announce the project. The first T1 backbone on the internet was just installed, for the first time providing broad internet access, and the first country outside the United States, I don't know if anyone knows what country that was, got connected to the internet. It's the Netherlands. And it was just a very interesting time then. And that was supported in part by the very first transatlantic fiber optic cable laid. And of course, that was done, that project started with the idea to support up to 40,000 phone calls, but ultimately was co-opted by the internet. And also big in that year 25 years ago was the Morris worm, which we still talk about today in computer security and really thrust the FBI and law enforcement for the first time into the new world of the internet. And so that's 25 years ago. And if you look ahead the next 25 years, the nature of exponentials means that we will see exponentially more change and advancements in 25 years than from 25 years ago to now. And so I guess I can only say I'm glad I don't have to say anything meaningful to you today about what things will look like, because we have a great set of panelists who are set to do that. I'm only the moderator. And so what I'd like to do is introduce our panelists, and as I do that, let me invite each panelist to come and take their seat. And so we will start. Oh, that's me. Can we all just thank Peter for his great introduction? Thank you. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what our panelists have to say. And so the way we'll run this is each of our panelists will have a few minutes to make some opening remarks, and then we'll have plenty of time, I hope, for some open discussion and Q&A. And so our panelists, let me first invite Dr. Arti Singh, who's assistant professor in the machine learning department. Arti, thank you. And then secondly, Dr. Emma Brunskill, who is an assistant professor in the computer science department. And then third, the person with the best name in all of computer science, Dr. Severin Hacker. And so Dr. Hacker is a co-founder and CTO of Duolingo. And if you haven't checked out Duolingo, you should. It's really a wonderful place. And then finally, Dr. Paul Barnett, who's the executive producer and creative director at Electronic Arts. Paul? And so with that, without any further delay, let me invite Arti to take the stage, and let's dive right in.
Well, thanks, Peter, for the nice introduction. First of all, I must say that it's really an honor and a privilege to be part of this great institution that has really been the leader, let me not trip here, in computer science for 25 years. And I should start by saying that I'm an assistant professor in the machine learning department, and really I'm pretty new to computer science in the sense that I got my PhD in electrical engineering, and I then became a professor here in the School of Computer Science. And I think what really makes us unique is the fact that we are SCS. We are a School of Computer Science, whereas at any other place it would just be a computer science department. And that's, I think, really what, in some sense, CMU has achieved over these 25 years is being able to identify and embrace the fact that computer science is not just a standalone discipline, but it interacts with a lot of other disciplines, and we are going to ever expand and embrace both. Like, we have the first machine learning department ever, and still I think it's the only one in the world. I think that's fair to say. Then we have the language technologies department, the human and computer interaction department, and many more. In fact, there are 7 institutes that are part of the School of Computer Science. So I think that's really what makes us unique, the fact that we can embrace all these different areas and make connections to them. And I think going forward in the future, like, that's what I think at least is one of the, based on my little experience in computer science so far, but I think that's what I project, that it's going to be just ever embracing other areas and working more and more closely with them. So with that, let me say a little bit more about my perspective coming from a machine learning person. So we are in the age of big data, and I'm sure you've heard this word over and over again. It's been talked about by government. So White House had this big data initiative they started, and NSF and a lot of funding agencies are supporting that now. And in fact, we were the first, amongst the first call that went out, there were 8 proposals that were accepted to big data, and 2 of them were from the machine learning department at the School of Computer Science here, which is great. We also have clearly companies, Microsoft, Google, lots of other ones that are talking about big data and coming up with new initiatives there. We have, in fact, Harvard Business Review had this article where they identified data scientists as the sexiest job of the 21st century. And I think we actually see that here at CMU. If you look at the enrollment in our courses, just the graduate level machine learning course, we have, if I'm not correct, not incorrect, we have nearly 400 students registered this semester. And that's every semester we have 400 graduate level students. That's only masters and PhDs that are taking our courses. And clearly the machine learning department does not have as many students. These are being drawn from all across the different disciplines. So it again gets to the question that, machine learning, or in general, like computer science, I should say, is really getting interdisciplinary, and that's the way to go. All right. So I quickly wanted to mention that with big data come big challenges, but I really like to think of them as big opportunities. And there are lots of things we are doing currently and that we'll continue to do that are going to transform the way we live, work, and play. I guess that was the motto. So we have been talking about sort of personalizing things. So of course, you are all probably familiar with personalized recommendations. If yesterday I go and I was searching for clothes for my 1-year-old, then today that appears everywhere I log into the web. Like if I Google something, or if I'm on Facebook, or anywhere I go, I see ads of children's clothes come up. So that's already a personalized recommendation that's going on. But going forward, things like personalized medicine. So that's what this is here, that where they can take your entire history, each individual's entire history and your genome, or your brain scans of each individual person down to maybe even the neuron level, and actually be able to perform any kind of prescribe medications to you, or perform any kind of procedures on you, all governed by your individual history. I think that's really important. We also already see how different people are, and how it's important to have different kind of medications or everything prescribed to them, right? And then we see that even in going forth, so this is all about like sort of healthcare, but talking about like robotic surgery, that's common now, but still the purpose that robots are serving is just as precision tools or allowing us to be non-invasive, right? But I think going forward, there's much more we can do there in the sense that learning algorithms or computer algorithms so far have been just about they look at some data and then they learn to do a task, right? We don't want to go through all the documents on the web, so they look at a bunch of documents, try to classify them. But I think going forth, what we really want to do is make these algorithms much more intelligent and much more interactive. They have to be able to interact with the person, in this case, the doctor over there, and be able to suggest maybe new procedures or maybe suggest a different route if they are trying to say operate in your brain based on your personal information. The computer can suggest here's the right way to go and operate on a particular part. All right, and then taking that one step forward, we have actually automated, or I should say machine-assisted scientific discoveries. That's, I think, another big thing we have to push forth, and I can see that happening at least to some extent over the next 25 years, where again, computers are not just doing simple mundane tasks, but they're actually involved in the scientific and social discovery process, where they can suggest important events, important strategies, important policies to humans. And of course, it's still humans are involved in the loop, but they are being assisted a lot by machines and really helping supervise overall what's going on. And then finally, I wanted to mention that this is no longer something you would see in a movie. So this is Precog, if you remember from Minority Report. I think we are very much there where we can sort of preempt crimes. And I can see this happening in the 25 years, where we can preempt crimes by looking at, based on like the data we have right now. In particular, say we can put a person through a brain scanner. That's just one of the fascinations you can have. And actually try to think if he's planning to rob a bank or something like that. And that's actually work going on here at CMU. We have within the machine learning department people trying to decode thoughts of people. So that's not too far into the future that we'll actually have maybe a Precog, right? So with that, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that I identified as with big data also come big risks, right? Because now we have lots and lots of information that's out there, and using that, we can make smarter and smarter algorithms that can assist us in improving our quality of life. But we also have to think about a big question that comes up is privacy, right? We are sharing all this data. Everything we type into Google is really stored somewhere. So they have so much information, and everything else, like Facebook, all the interactions you do are recorded. So how can we ensure privacy of people while still trying to get the maximum out of the data we have? So I think that's going to be a big challenge going forth. And of course, we have started thinking about it, but I think it's still in very segregated way. We need to sort of combine them together and think of, can we have algorithms that are good at certain tasks, but also preserve privacy? And maybe not just these two things. There are several axes we might have to optimize. Maybe we also have to optimize the operational costs or resources and so on. So yeah, just looking at a joint coming up with algorithms that jointly look at multiple objectives. And finally, this is sort of the big question that I don't think I have an answer to is everybody wonders about, we are developing smarter and smarter algorithms, will we run into the rise of the machines question, like will machines somehow overtake all of us? And I don't have a good answer. I don't see it happening in the next 25 years. And I think humans are sort of intelligent enough that even if we offload some tasks to machines, we'll come up with more creative things to do. But yeah, that will be an interesting point for discussion. So with that, I'll end. Thanks.
I think they did a really good job of ordering us today because a lot of the things that I'll talk about will build on what Artie was just saying. So I'm a professor in the computer science department here, and I work on machine learning agents that interact with people. And I'm really interested in a lot of the computational challenges that come up when we start to think about this particular regime. So I'm going to do the opposite, or maybe sort of a slightly different ordering than what Artie did, in terms of I'm going to start with what I work on, and then I'm going to talk about sort of where I see the field going. So in particular, they told me this might happen. There we go. Great. So in terms of interactive machine learning agents, the application area that I am most passionate about is education. There's about 250 million people in the world, children, that don't get access to basic education. Also, current statistics estimate that most people will have on the order of 11 jobs in their lifetime. And I think between those two, it's pretty clear that we're going to need some amazing ways to teach people new skills. So my favorite example of how this is possible is from The Matrix. So many of you guys have probably seen this movie, but in it there's a protagonist. One of the protagonists is Trinity, and there's a situation in which she needs to learn to fly a helicopter. So what she does is she brings out her very old cell phone and calls someone who downloads a program into her brain. And about 20 seconds later, she can fly the helicopter and save the world. So I love this. I think this would be tremendous. I think that this gives me a vision of how fast education could be and how needs-driven it could be. And I think we need both of these things in education. And I think that machine learning and AI could help us get there. Now, it's unfortunately a really hard problem, or maybe fortunately, so I'm going to have a job for a while. If you search for how to learn to program, you get over 1 trillion results. 1 trillion. And in addition to this, this is just results about how to program. In general, there are over 200 trillion ways for how to think about teaching. That came out of a recent science paper by Ken Koeniger, who is another member of our wonderful School of Computer Science. And so this is an enormous search problem. How do we sort of efficiently search through this space and think about better ways to teach? But I think we have a really huge advantage now that wasn't ever possible before, in that we can now instrument and track learning. And I think that gives us an enormous opportunity. In some ways, we're not lacking subjects. We have over 6 billion people in the world that are learning all the time. And if we could instrument even a little bit of that, that would allow us to potentially radically accelerate education. So I think of this as a machine learning and an optimization problem. How can we adaptively select activities or create activities to help people learn better or to become more engaged or achieve the goals that they want to do in terms of learning? And so from data, we can feed that into computers that learn models and predict instructional policies that we then use to teach that generates new data. I think of this as a really big opportunity because I think that we can move beyond the standard sort of scientific paradigm of trying to compare just say 2 different types of instructional policies, which would take us many centuries to learn how education works, and instead do much more rapid experimentation. And I think that's going to help us actually try to solve these problems much faster than what was possible before. So for example, compared to standard experimentation, where you get enough data where you can often tell reliably if there's a significant difference or exactly what the outcome is of 2 things, here we just want to get good outcomes. And so we can sample in places that seem to be more promising and spend more of our effort there. So this is the type of work we do in my lab. I think that things like scientific discovery, like Artie was mentioning, is certainly stuff that we work on. We work at things like scientific surprise. How can we figure out where scientific theories fail and put more effort onto sampling those so we can extend scientific discovery faster? I think in terms of the future, one of the things that I think is interesting is actually small data. I think big data is very important, and I'm excited about its possibilities. But when we think about people, we often have very small amounts of data. And we also have no ability to reset. So for example, if I teach Mario fractions, and at the end realize how I should have taught him fractions, I can't reset Mario and then say, okay, let's try that all again. Let's rewind. And so that's a big challenge. We have to think about algorithms that can deal with the no reset. I think another thing we have to think about is moving beyond averages and expectation. There's a lot of problems with things like No Child Left Behind, but I think that the sentiment is right. We care about, when we think about people, the outcomes for every single individual. So we want algorithms that don't just maximize an expectation, but think about risk and think about individual outcome guarantees. I think another thing that we'll see a lot going forward is also something that Artie and Peter also mentioned, which is integration with other areas. And I think that the School of Computer Science does this incredibly well, and we'll see even more of that. I think this is particularly important when we think about how computer science can benefit humanity, because we know that things like economics were revolutionized when they started to think about the fact that people are not rational agents. And so I think that when we think of computer science and having intelligent agents that interact with people, we have to interact with disciplines that know something about how people work. I also think going forward that that's a really big opportunity, which is how can we start to have humans and intelligent agents work together to do things that neither can do alone. And I think that that target of what computers are best at or intelligent agents are best at and what people are best at is going to continue to shift over the next 25 years. We're going to be hearing soon about more sort of creative things, and I think that's something that people are going to be able to contribute for a long time, at least 25 years. I don't think we're going to be able to outsource that anytime soon. I think in terms of the risks and the potential, one thing that I worry about, even though I'm ultimately optimistic, is that the sort of virtual world is becoming more and more engaging and more entrancing compared to real life. I think that we create engaging experiences that are intended to optimally keep us engaged from what can sometimes be boring things like grocery shopping or interacting with like making dinner and things like that, which can often be quite mundane aspects compared to playing League of Legends. So how do we create systems that can still hopefully help us all interact together and keep us engaged in real life? One thing that I found really interesting as I've moved from doing a postdoc at Berkeley to being here is that in both places I've seen campaigns to try to get kids to go outside. And it tries to attract people to leave their video games and go to a forest. And I think it's interesting to think about how could we have intelligent agents not just keep us online longer, but keep us more engaged, happier, better people, both online and offline. Thanks.
Hello everybody, my name is Severin Hacker, and you may think my last name is a joke, but it's not. It's actually my true, real last name. So I grew up in Switzerland. I was born and raised in Switzerland. I did high school there. I did the military training, so I was in the Swiss Army. That's the one with the Swiss Army knives. I eventually studied computer science at ETH Zurich, and I always wanted to study in the US. So when the opportunity came to do an exchange here at CMU, I took it. And I came here, and I heard about this work by a professor called Luis Fonan. I thought, wow, this is really cool. I really want to meet that person. I really want to find out more about what he's doing. And at some point, I thought, OK, let's just go to his office. So I went to his office, knocked at the door, introduced myself as Severin Hacker, and again, he thought like this is a joke. But he said, you have some good ideas among many bad ones. Let's start working together. So we started working together, and he eventually convinced me to do a PhD here. So I have a PhD from CMU. That's why I can now call myself Dr. Hacker. He's very convincing. So he convinced me to do a PhD here. And about 2 years into my PhD, we started working on the thing that eventually became Duolingo. And the original research question was actually kind of different to what you probably would expect. The original research question was, how can we translate the web? Okay, how can we translate the entirety of the World Wide Web into every possible language? And that was the original question. And we felt like, if you want to do that, we need millions of people to help us. And when you need millions of people to help you, you run into two problems. First of all, there are not that many people who speak two languages fluently. Okay. Now, even if you can get all of the people who speak two languages fluently, say all the bilinguals in the world, how do you motivate them? Like, why would they help you translate the web? And we realized, after a while thinking, maybe there's one way we can solve these two problems with, kill these two birds with one stone. And that is by not having bilinguals, but language learners. So the idea is, the core idea of Duolingo is that people learn a foreign language while simultaneously translating text. So while you learn, every now and then you actually translate a sentence from the web that needs to be translated. That's the core idea. However, if you think a bit more about this, if you really want to get all the people who want to learn a language, there's about 1 billion people out there who want to learn a language. If you want to get really all of them, you need to have a really good educational component. So the learning must be really good. So how can we make the learning really good? And this is where we jump into kind of like my current work, which is like, how can we improve this learning component? And common wisdom says that education is either bad or exclusive, right? And I want to reverse that. I want everybody to have access to the best education. And here's my plan. So let's start with Duolingo. Today, Duolingo is the largest language learning platform in the world. In fact, there are more people learning languages on Duolingo than in the entire US school system. But Duolingo is not only popular, it's also highly effective. A study found that 34 hours of Duolingo are equivalent to 1 college semester of Spanish. And that's just the beginning. At Duolingo, we're doing what Emma said before. We're constantly improving the learning effectiveness by running A/B tests with millions of users. So, for example, should we first teach adjectives or verbs? We can test this by giving 50% of our students first adjectives and the other 50% first verbs, and then see which group performs better. Note that in traditional research, they usually only experiment with a handful of classrooms. And here we're experimenting with millions of users. So what this essentially means is that with Duolingo, we achieved a closed feedback loop. The more people that learn with Duolingo, the better we can make the teaching. And the better we can make the teaching, the more people will learn with Duolingo. Or said differently, we are learning how humans learn through data and on a previously unimaginable scale. With this approach, I believe we can build a learning system that is 10 times more effective than anything out there. And not only that, due to the huge scale of this operation, I believe we can try new business models that otherwise wouldn't work for education. In particular, I believe we can have business models where the education part is completely free to the end user. And finally, I read this somewhat shocking remark that there are now more people with access to toilets. Sorry, there are more people with access to mobile phones than toilets. I didn't think about that. Now, what I believe is, in the future, everybody who has access to a mobile phone will have access to the best education. And hopefully everything else will follow from there.
We're just going to keep this up, the entire thing. It's nice and complicated, I like it. Wow. I'm not a doctor. It's very nice I was introduced as one. I'm not. My mother's very happy. If you've got a video of that, send me a copy. Send it to her and I'll tell her I'm a doctor. We'll make her happy. I know nothing about computer science. Zero. Absolutely nothing. Peter was very nice and tried to fool me that I did. In fact, lots of people have encouraged me that I know something about computer science. I don't. One of the things you need to do in life is realize what you don't know. I don't know what the winning lottery numbers will be. Stop buying lottery tickets. It's a very good system, keeps you away from things that make you feel like you know what you're talking about when actually you're an idiot. So a couple of things. First, I have virtually no education. I was thrown out of the British education system at 16. There's lots of reasons for that. No, there are. I'm colorblind. It's browns, reds, and greens. So strategic maps in RTSs are abysmal to me. I'm asthmatic, so sport was no good. I'm dyslexic, although it's only mildly dyslexic. For the other dyslexics, don't get me. I'm admitting I'm only mildly dyslexic. And thank you, academics, for giving my condition an impossible to spell name. Good, thank you for that. It's very good of you. I'm also deaf at the top third of hearing, which I didn't discover until I was 34 when my son failed a hearing test, and then I failed it. It's actually a genetic condition. It meant that all those times I was accused of ignoring people, I just couldn't hear them. I think I can do about that. Why is all that important? I was born on what Americans would call trailer parks. I was born in caravan sites, so I come from poverty. So why is all that important? It's important for a couple of reasons, which I'm going to mindlessly troll through now. The first is, here I am on a panel talking about computer science at Carnegie Mellon. That's kind of impossible. But what that does show you is the distance you can travel if you put your mind to it and you try really hard and you're willing to apply to something, you've got passion for it. That's really important. The second reason it's really important is because if you put enough academics together, God knows what you'll do. I mean that legitimately. We should just invent dangerous diseases again. Why? I don't know. Why are you doing that? It's a good idea. No, it's not. Dinosaurs. Stop it. And so here we are having a legitimate conversation about the future of computer science, and we have an uneducated creative. So well done. In 25 years, a significant improvement. If we keep going in that direction, we're going to get somewhere really cool, trust me. I did what Peter did. I looked back at the last 25 years, and then I ignored it because I went and talked to my daughter. She's 13 in England. She's 13 all over the world. And she said to me, the 1991s. Think about that. The 1991s. I stopped her and I said, you don't say it like that. She said, yes, you do. There's the 1700 and somethings, the 1800 and somethings, and the 1900s. That's the 1991s. I did not feel old in the slightest. She had a question. We were talking about computer science. She had a question. She said, well, you Twittered when you were younger. And I said, no, we didn't have it. Well, you Facebooked. No, we didn't have that. Well, you YouTube. I didn't have that. Without missing a beat, she said, you just had Google. Think about that for a moment, because you laugh. But remember, the generation that built the internet wasn't the generation that decided to do cool stuff with the internet. That isn't the generation that works through the internet. We now have a generation who just assume it's always been this way. My son is convinced that the world was black and white before 1960. Because every piece of archival footage we have is in black and white. He goes, it must be, Dad. When did color arrive? It just turned up one day. And you don't understand it, but right now you are living in a time period that 25 years from now you're going to bemoan. You're going to be talking to people saying, if we wanted to watch a movie, it wasn't in your brain. It was on a wall, a machine. Your mother had to pick up plates and carry them by hand into a dishwasher. A dishwash by hand. You don't even know what I'm talking about. 2 cars. We only had 2 cars. That's where we're going to be. So when you look forward and you try to be useful, I thought, well, I better figure out something that's useful. So I've decided the Industrial Revolution in England in the 1800s. Stay with me, I'm getting to a point. The Industrial Revolution in the 1800s is computer science 25 years ago, and here's why. Back then, they built great big factories, computers, and they had to build them in very particular places, like next to streams, because they needed the power. And they had huge machines in them and loads of people, and they basically just did one thing. Mess around with wool, change cotton, sew stuff. And then they were sent all over the world, and these great big huge things made singular things that were then sent out. And if you wanted to do it, you had to go there and build one yourself. But as you go forward in time from the Industrial Revolution, some amazing things happen. An electricity grid for a start, so you can put your factories anywhere. We started getting machines that were more powerful and cleverer. We started getting better user interfaces, so you could actually just pull a lever. Before you knew it, the machines and the factories were distributed all over the world. And whereas at one point, the concept of pressed steel in Sheffield was the only way of building a battleship, now all of a sudden, you could get pressed steel anywhere. It had become a commodity, an outsourced commodity where it was then just based on price versus quality. That was it. You go forward in time and look into the Industrial Revolution, and machines were being orphaned approximately every 10 years. It then speeds up to 5 years. And the machines are getting faster and cleverer and more brilliant. And you look at where we are in computer science from 25 years ago to now, and you realize we've gone through this period of huge, great big machines doing singular things. And then as we've got cleverer, it's mirrored the Industrial Revolution. And when I look, because I'm at computer games, by the way, I probably should have told you that, sorry. When I look at what we're doing with computer games, I go, oh, it's an interesting thing. The hardware's almost irrelevant. The computing power has been effectively outsourced. Storage, which let me tell you, 2 meg used to cost a fortune. For a Mega Drive, hard drive, 4 things, it's $500. You don't even know what I'm talking about. It just doesn't matter anymore. It's in the cloud. Cloud storage. In 25 years, I was talking to my friend about 25 years, we'll probably just name a planet. Moon storage, that's further than cloud. Pluto storage. It's amazing. And so we've distributed that. So hardware, I don't think, is the issue. And I'm not really sure capacity is the issue. I'm not sure storage is the issue. It's probably going to be software. And then when you look at what we've done, just like the Industrial Revolution, it grows exponentially when customers give a crap. When they won't just buy a black car, and they don't just want to have this shirt, when they want things. Industrial Revolution exploded, and look at it, did exactly the same thing. Look at the internet, it's great at this. It was moving data backwards and forwards, potentially because of a war that we never had, spending a lot of money with a man. And then people said, no, I want to use it. The birth of browsers, the birth of usable software. I want to be able to upload things to it. The internet exploded. It became this amazing thing that was customer driven. And so when I look at the future for computer science going forward as a creative, because I can risk an arm, I think it's not going to be hardware, and it's not going to be capacity, it's not going to be storage. It's going to be software. It's going to be user-led. And therefore, the singular information that you need to have in your heads, apart from listen to your parents, they were probably right. Sorry about that. The singular thing is probably communication. Because in my life, day to day, the only difficult task I have is trying to explain to computer science people what I want and them trying to understand me. If I could crack that, we would never have another ending to Mass Effect 3 like we had. And so, the one thing that I would say about computer science to go forward is we're going to reach the entire world, and if we can just communicate, listen, understand, and share, I think we will fundamentally change the world forever through computer science in exactly the same way we've changed the world already.
As the moderator, I think, so first of all, thank you all, really wonderful remarks, and most importantly, you all kept in time. And the most important consequence of that is, as a moderator, that gives me time to ask a few questions before opening it up, which I am dying to do. And by the way, the ending of Mass Effect 3 was actually awful.
I think we've got that.
And so, if I can just ask some forbearance from the audience and allow me to ask a few questions to start, I'd like to see if I can put each of you on the spot a little bit on your thoughts about the future. And so, starting with you, Arti, the possibilities in big data and being able to extract intelligence out of big data just seem just so intoxicating now. And of course, it's something that so many of us in research are just chasing. And as a result, it's just progressing really rapidly. And when you see what we're able to do now in having machines see and hear and understand us better and better and understand the world better, it's pretty amazing. And then when companies like Microsoft or Google or anyone sees the commercial value, it just adds more fuel to the fire. So I want to put you on the spot. And so you're going to look ahead 25 years. And what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that machines and automation will be able to do? What are the things that would make headlines that will just amaze people and say, wow, I never thought a machine would be able to do that?
All right. First, I should say that you were the one who said you didn't want to comment on what 25 years after would look like. That was so let me put you on the spot. But let's see. I mean, it's hard to say, as you said, right? Like, it's hard to say what exactly will make it. We can just speculate based on where the field is going right now, that there are a few things that, will be mind blowers at that time that they happened. And I can only give examples. Like, there's no way to say, like, this is exactly what will make it. But, like, the Precog stuff I talked about is not too far. I think there is, I actually recently read an article where they're actually trying to implement something like that, where they have computer programs that are actually taking a lot of data about, people who are on their paroles, or people who are or in general about the society, and trying to actually predict or prevent crimes, I should say, So that's something I see in some, like machines assisting more and more with that. It's almost a reality, but I think it can go to a much bigger stage, just like Precog was sort of. So maybe something along those lines would be one of them.
So mind reading is something that really becomes practical technology.
Possibly, yes. Yeah.
I can just imagine that in the same way we see a divide between young and old, a generational divide in attitude towards privacy, that I could very well imagine similar kinds of divides.
Right, yes, definitely. So there are, as I said, like going forward, there are going to be risks that we'll be taking, and we need to be prudent about that.
Right.
For sure, yes.
So Emma, the vision of this future where access to information technology just really makes people's lives so much better and really better at an increasing rate. It does bring back questions about the so-called digital divide, because the gap between people who have access to these technologies and don't becomes even more important. And so how do you see that developing over the next 25 years?
I was thinking about this recently, and I think that I'm hopeful about it because I think we're going to be able to leapfrog. I think that, we've sort of had the same educational system for at least 100 years, and it hasn't been that great. And I think that there's a lot of places where people have no access to education, and I think they could just leapfrog in much of the way that we're doing for energy and telecommunications, that we could do it for education. And in fact, probably most of you are familiar with the X Prize. Well, there's a new one for education, and the specific goal is to put tools in the hands of people who are living in developing countries that have no access to education, tablet-based technologies that help them allow to learn by themselves or learn in groups. And I think that this sort of focus is really exciting because it argues that we should be focusing our attention on allowing people to learn autonomously or in small groups, and to do so in a way that we don't just accelerate the capabilities that the sort of top 1% have and really bring everyone to the table. And I think that this is also really important because if you assume that intelligence is equally distributed, which I do, I think it's a really simple premise, then it's ridiculous that we're losing out on the talent and abilities and dreams of the majority of people on the planet. And I think if we're going to solve some things like climate change and a lot of the other challenges that we're going to be facing, we need everybody to be participating in that. And I think that these types of educational technologies could help us reach that.
One of the concerns that's sometimes raised beyond digital divide is somehow a loss of a sense of unique culture around the world. So if let's say education becomes very widely available and becomes more similar everywhere, do you think we end up losing something, or do the gains outweigh the losses?
I think we could, but I also think that there's the potential to personalize on a radically more, on a radical scale that isn't possible now. And so I think even within America, there's lots of different styles of teaching that we could capture. One thing that I love that's going on in Duolingo, and maybe Severin will say more about this, is ways that they're getting sort of community-sourced ways to teach language, so that we don't lose those languages and people can teach all the different languages in the world. And so now not only can you learn a really small language that it might be part of some African tribe, but then everybody in the world can learn that. And so I think that we can leverage all of us as students, but also all of us as teachers.
Really wonderful. And then one of the things that I've reflected on going to DARPA and Microsoft is not to say that DARPA and Microsoft don't have optimistic and pure views of the future, but I think nowhere does it really take root more than at universities and great ones like this. Okay, Dr. Hacker. How dare you work to put every university and school out of business? But of course, underlying that little joke is a question about the future of educational institutions. If you are completely successful and everything is really available, and in fact not only the access to education but the creation of education is democratized completely, what happens to places like Carnegie Mellon?
It's a good question. So, I mean, we're starting right now with languages. As far as I know, Carnegie Mellon University is not in that business. So, not much to worry there. We do think about other areas. One particular is like learning how to program, because that's one of the key skills, I think, for the 21st century. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think in the end, what you want to look is, kind of like as a society, what is the goal of society? If the society's goal is to have educated citizens, we should not care how we get there, right? In particular, I think the government should. That's my personal view, not Duolingo's view. my personal view is that the government should not be involved in actually providing the education, but it should set the standards and kind of regulate the market. So I think the government should say, okay, look, we want to have educated citizens that understand how our government works. They understand how democracy works. They can read, write, listen. All skills we need. They can program, and let the market find out how to get there. And that's what I think. If there's a place for CMU, or that could be a private provider or a public provider or a startup or anything, that should be the goal, I think.
Right. And do you foresee the world in 25 years where almost virtually everyone is multilingual?
That's a good question, because so this is a question I have myself, because right now, most people on Duolingo want to learn English. Okay, so I'm not sure if we're actually making the language space more diverse, or if we're actually going towards this one language that everybody speaks, which is probably going to be English, because that's what it is right now. I'm not sure about that. So it could become like that. It's just it's one language, and everybody's going to speak English, and that's it, and there will be nothing else left. Or it could also go in the other way, where because of things like Duolingo, where now you can learn things way faster, you actually can easily learn 5 languages. Oh, then all those languages stay around. I really don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, very.
I'm curious myself.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I personally really enjoyed and got a lot out of Duolingo. It's great. So, Dr. Barnett.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your main point at the end about communication really struck me in a particularly interesting way, because a big struggle for anyone running an industrial research lab is the question of tech transfer, and that is fundamentally a communication challenge between the people who are doing research and the creatives and the engineers trying to design and make products. And it is a very practical problem now, and I wonder if, given maybe there's a fundamental intractability or incompatibility there, and so I wonder if, as in the context of your comments, if you see somehow research happening in a different way in order to kind of skirt around it, or how would you see the future in order to address this communication challenge that you're talking about?
More inclusive input from people who aren't obsessively trying to do computer science would be the first way of doing it. You've got a really interesting, crazy metal box of madness that you're pouring money into, and it's full of really, really clever people, and it squirts stuff out. And we sort of go, oh no, put it there. And it would be kind of interesting to allow other people to see it, play with it, see what it was doing. So the answer to what a robot's going to do that's amazing, I have 25,000 answers because I'm a creative, but what I actually think they'll do is you just won't notice them. They already do amazing things, but they do amazing things because you don't know they're doing them. And so it's just going to be more of that sort of insidious takeover of, if for some reason there was a loss of power, then the human race would collapse. Because now we don't know how to cook things, because microwave's broken. When I look at research, we do work with CMU about gaming, but we don't ask people to make us games. We give them a very particular problem that we're trying to fix in games that we don't want to spend any money on. And then we fool other researchers into spending money on it and get them to do it. And then if it's any good, we steal it. I mean, that's currently our current interaction. Honesty is the best policy. But the sort of stuff I would talk about is, when I talk to my computer science people, I gathered about 20 of them at HQ, told them I was coming here, and asked them what they thought was going to happen. And my initial goal was to steal all their ideas, pass them off as my own, and appear to be credible. What I discovered is their introvert, non-communication skills are massive. Their ability to look downwards is really strong. They're shy and immensely clever. And so if you ever manage to scrape through all that and get to it, they go, I don't know, and they mumble something. And in the end, they gave me a napkin that they'd written on. And I'm not kidding you, that's what they gave me. That was their contribution to my talk, a napkin. And then I realized, no, this whole point I've got about communication is probably good, because that's where we are. So the sort of things that struck me would be, if you're going to study computer science, go and do things outside of your class that involve other people who aren't computer scientists. I'd have a crack at that. That would be like my starting point. My second point would be, go and fail at something, because you're all immensely clever and you keep scoring A's at everything. Go do something you're not good at and fail, because if you apply the things you're learning and fail with them, you'll be amazed how you can tighten them up and improve and get better. I would encourage them to talk to people who don't do what they do. A juggler, perhaps. I would force them to go and work in a Starbucks and make a cup of coffee. Why? Because when you build your crazy machines, normal human beings have to use them. And look, what a disaster this is. I would encourage them to try singing, dancing, do some improv. I would encourage them to do those burn down presentations where it flicks over every couple of seconds. Remember, I went to a boxing gym. There's nothing like watching people trying to knock each other unconscious to have a creative thought. And one of the things they were doing there is, on the rotation of hit the heavy bag, do ab work, smack another person in the chops, is they put you in the middle and made you sing, which the boxers can't do. First they can't sing, and secondly they don't want to do it. And it was done to break away that introvertness they have, so that they could actually express who they were. So if boxing can do that, I'm not sure there are many great breakthroughs we've had with boxing. But if they can crack that, I would recommend something in a sort of similar vein and allow them to communicate, because there's nothing more frustrating for me than to know that they know, and to know that I can't get it to them and they can't get it from me. It's the worst possible place to be in. So that's why I think communication is the right way.
I really find what I'm trying to blurt out is it does seem completely plausible over the next 2 to 3 decades that communication bandwidth, all forms of communication bandwidth, will become very precious, because we see computing power improving much faster than network bandwidth. We see every 2 to 3 years the number of scientific articles being published doubling, and on and on. So just the sheer volume ends up being something that would challenge human attention span and time. So there's something very fundamental about this. I have so many more questions on my mind, but I'm sure there are some also in the audience. And so let me stop and give a chance. And I don't know who runs the rules here. Do I pick on people? Or?
Yes, you can pick them up.
Okay. Great. So we'll start here on the left.
Is there any chance for computer science to help improve deterioration of the human brain? For example, we have this vast baby boom generation getting old. Many of those, millions of those people are going to develop dementia, lose memory. What can computer science do to alleviate that issue?
Artie, I think this is thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I think that's a great question. I think that what computer science can do is actually, one, help us understand the brain better, so that then we can find, cures for, or at least alternate solutions for the kind of problems that you're talking about. right? So I think computers can, I think really in terms of helping understand the brain, because that's a very complex structure. As humans, we are not able to, and we are collecting lots of data. The technology is getting where we can, map very, very high level resolution maps of the brain and so on, but to be able to actually get meaningful information out of it is still very hard. And I think computer science is helping us unleash the potential of those data sets. Like I work with some neuroscientists who have very high resolution data, but they're just not able to make sense of it. They just, throw away a lot of the information because they don't have, the right tools to do it. And that's where I think computer science can step in and help.
I guess referring back to Mass Effect 3, we can also ask if computers will cause more dimensions.
That's a fair question.
Thank you. I'm from School of Architecture, and I wanted to tie together Paul's singing boxer to the introduction that Andrew gave us about multidisciplinarity on this campus. And I think that's one of the strengths, starting with Andrew Carnegie creating a technical school, and on the other end of the mall, the first drama school in the United States. And so in my research, I work with Entertainment Technology Center, Scilab, Robotics, Heinz, Design School. And I think that's the secret of the next 25 years. And I think Paul characterized it very well personally of how this might happen. And why is it there? I think there's the creativity side of it, mixing artists together with technicians. That makes some sense. We've all had that experience. Secondly, there's the social value of what we do. We've talked about that too. Why are we doing these things? Why are we collecting the big data? The human scientists, social scientists, public policy people can answer that question. We can't do any of these things ourselves. So rather than asking a question, I'm just making a statement, but I think what we see here is the possibility of the next 25 years, Carnegie Mellon leading the charge again. We've just appointed a vice provost of design, arts, and technology, probably the first position like that in the world. So I see that as the future, is the multidisciplinarity and the respect for all those disciplines.
Great. So what about that? In fact, listening to that, it does occur to me that you are all actually unusually interdisciplinary researchers and thinkers. Is that the future? Is the idea of the disciplines as we understand them today, is that fading over the next 25 years?
Yeah, I don't know if you can call it fading, but I would say it's definitely complementing each other. Maybe that's the way to say it, right? Yeah.
I could see it fading. I could see education being focused on solving problems. And then what are the tools we need to do that? You want to help solve climate change. Well, you're going to need to do policy and civil engineering, and to have sort of education be more in modules, and then you combine them together to solve these problems.
In computer games, it swings and roundabouts. We're just coming out of a massive specialist phase. So we've just had a phase where we have people who just know about graphics cards, and they just know about moving things in memory. And we're now backing out of that because the place where we're making games requires people who are much broader rather than people who are specialists. And so we're in this sort of tipping point where someone spent 15 years of their life being the absolute best graphics coder they can possibly be, and I don't need them. I need someone who can use Unity because it's a broader product. So it's moved in computer games. I don't know whether it goes linearly in computer science. It might move backwards and forwards. I do know that all the enjoyable benefits we've had seem to have come from people I like talking to with creative ideas who've worked with geniuses. So if we can have more of those, I think that's what happens when we put them together.
I have to say, from the perspective of someone who moved away from CMU to two other very interesting research organizations, that there is something really, and I'm not trying to flatter this audience, there's something really special and unique about the kind of natural predisposition towards interdisciplinary research here. At DARPA, I had the chance to visit about 30 other departments and research labs around the country, and there's really nothing quite like it here. I don't know if people who have only been here really understand how special it is. And so whatever that formula is, if it could be replicated, I think it could be important. One theory about this, in various theories about innovation by economists, is that when there are very significant transitions in the underlying technology, let's say 5 years from now we suddenly have quantum computers, that drives a need or a high value in specialization. Because suddenly you have something new that really needs to be built out in a serious way. But then as it matures and you get into a problem-solving phase, exploiting these as tools, and there's value in interdisciplinary work. Anyway, there's lots of people who want to ask questions.
So, but thank you. In that context, interdisciplinary action, we've been listening, or at least parents and alumni have been listening to university presidents and Supreme Court justices calling for humanities and social sciences involvements in the harder sciences. So my question's for Paul, apropos games informing computer science. I found your call for the power of games compelling. I'm sure you're aware of the work of Professor Ian Bogost in that regard. So in that context, you're an EP at EA, you're the general manager of game studio Mythic, which is even more impressive. How do you respond to Dr. Hacker's website, which boasts of gamification in every ounce of the experience? And could you explain that reaction?
Well, gamification, yeah, that's interesting. We are close to having an electable president who will be incapable of arguing that they don't know what computer games are. We're that close. And in fact, we're close where they're going to have to admit what they played. That's how close we are. And so what's actually happening is a lot of old grey people like me are finding themselves in a position where they want to play games and they're just applying it to the world that they're in. And then we've got this nice tag gamification that we use. And it's really just getting people to do what they like doing. Collecting stars, unlocking achievements. You can see this in the loyalty cards for airlines. That's gamification. You ever met anyone who travels a lot with their airline card? You'd be amazed the lengths they will go to go and get some points. We've had gamification for years. We just gave it a name. What I do think's happening is as people have got older and are better. My mother never had a golden age of gaming when she was a little girl. I did when I was a little boy. It's from Empire Strikes Back to Say Anything. I played every single game there was. They're the best games ever. All games after are terrible. All games after are rehashes of my brilliant games. And all games before that are interesting but useless. Which is exactly the same attitude I have to music. There's a period where music was good and then terrible, and it's mine. And that's my golden age. And what you have to figure out in computer games is that everyone has a golden age. And everyone is absolutely convinced their golden age is best. But my mother is a miracle because her golden age starts when she's 60. And she has the love and joy and warmth of discovering games that I had when I was 8. And I have the most bizarre conversations with her. Because she picks up the phone and she says, "Oh, I'm playing this game. It's the greatest. What is it, Mum? It's called Farmville." What are you doing? Why are you playing it? And then I realized that she's in her golden age. She's just discovered games and they're fabulous. So when she hears gamification, she lights up. She'll go to the supermarket. They've got a gamification thing. I'm off. And off she goes to find out. So the attitude I have to it is the more we can talk about it and people don't try to beat me up in the schoolyard or tell me I'm wasting my time or tell me I should go out and get a proper job or go out into the forest and look at the sun, the happier I get. Because the more I can do what I love and share it with people, and the more when I sit down and tell them what I do. When you're at a dinner party and you say you make games, let me rephrase that. You never get invited to dinner parties if you make games. And I'm looking forward to being invited and saying it and not being treated like an idiot or a fool who's wasted their life. So roll on gamification. That's the part of the communication that will change how we make games. I'm all for it.
Thank you. Dr. Severin, do you have a comment on this topic?
Yeah, on gamification. So what actually I often see, I think, is what they call gamification, but it's actually pointification. It's like, okay, you get points for this and that. It's kind of like the airline miles.
Airline miles, yeah.
And when I think of Duolingo, I want it to be more like a game, not pointification. So I want it to be like, more like other aspects of games. Like you get immersed, you completely lose, like, you just solely focus on actually doing this one thing. That's what I want with Duolingo. I want it to be active, not like something that happens on the background while you're watching TV. You need to be completely focused on this. That's what I like about gamification, and that's what we build.
Which is oddly the complete opposite of where games are going. You know, games are becoming things that you do off angle while you're doing something else.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's odd that it's a complete opposite where we're going.
And Emma, referring to your really riveting photograph of this boy reading a book in a garbage pile. So in the emerging economies, is gamification emerging as something important, or do you see it emerging as a trend?
I think so. I think it's going to be huge. I mean, I think everybody would like to be more engaged in learning. And so if we can use games as part of the way to do that, then that'll be great. And I think that kids in India love video games as much as kids here. They may or not always have access to it. Some kids do, some kids don't. But I think gamification sometimes is viewed as a really good thing, and sometimes it is viewed somewhat disparagingly because it's thought of as a gimmick. But I think that in a deep way, it's about making things engaging and compelling, and everybody would like that.
Yeah. I think I'm obligated to say for my employer that the Xbox One just went on sale in China. So, next question.
Thank you. As the great philosopher Yogi Berra once said, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. So I thank the panel for doing so so assiduously. As Raj Reddy, who's sitting in the front row, said, had to be close to 20 years ago, technology ought to be able to compensate for any perceptual, motor, or cognitive deficit. When he said that, it really caught my imagination, the cognitive part especially. The first questioner asked, can you do something about dementia? But beyond compensating for deficits, why do we have to be stuck with the brains that we were born with? So what does the panel see as the potential limitations of having, whether it's a thinking cap or something surgical, that can augment our cognition with what's possible from technology? What will it feel like to be human 25 years from now with that power?
Ooh, I love this one. This is, because this one I think touches on so many, not just technological, but also ethical and social and maybe even legal issues. So what about, let's just say it plainly, human augmentation in the next 25 years? Let me start with you, Archie, sorry.
So I think it will happen, but I think that's where actually interdisciplinarity will play a big role, in the sense that computer scientists, if they involve, psychologists to look at the effect of not only developing a technology, but what's its implication as far as ethical issues go, as far as emotions go of people, legal issues go. So I think, yeah, computer scientists need to talk to lawyers, which we don't probably as much, except for maybe, issues that are peripheral. But yeah, we should be talking to psychologists, to more people who are, addressing these issues in ethical and all those issues, but in a separate realm that computer scientists are not. So yeah, I think that it in fact stresses on the importance of interdisciplinarity.
Yes, I would argue I think we're already partly there. I mean, I don't remember tons of things, and I don't do it because I can search. And so yes, I'm not augmented in that it's not here, and that's probably because I don't have a Google Glass. But I mean, I think that whether it's sort of in external devices I carry with me or things that are implanted in my brain, I think we're getting really close to there already. I think that some things, so to build on one thing that Artie already mentioned, one thing that scares me, though I think it's amazing, is read in instead of just read out. So some researchers are working on how do you implant memories as opposed to just read out memories. And I think if we start to augment our brain, then, with outside devices, then we need to be more concerned about read-in. What does it mean in 25 years? Will we have legal arguments that say, was it really their volition that they committed a crime, or did someone put a virus in their brain and made them do it? Or did we stimulate that neuron and that caused this error? So I think thinking about that seems something that we will probably be having to face with as we do become augmented. I think the other thing that I envision by the time, maybe not even 25 years, is we're going to have augmented realities. So I'll be talking to you, but I'll also be talking to someone in China, and there'll be my reality, all of our realities will likely be blended. Both I'll be seeing you and I'll be seeing virtual characters and everything else, as well as things that are reminding me. So I think we'll get there, and there's some really interesting ethical questions that will come up.
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually also kind of agree with what Emma said. I think the phone is actually very close to that augmentation. It's it's a device, but you're just so much more powerful if you have this device with you, right? Now suddenly you have access to basically all the world's information. That's something you couldn't do. It's not like a brain augmentation, but maybe if you want that, I don't know if computer science is the field that will do that. Maybe it's more like I don't know, chemistry or something.
You and I are wearing brain augmentations. If we weren't wearing glasses, we would not see as well, but it's seamless. It took 0 time to adapt, and we get information at the rate of vision, which is the highest data rate. So I'm wondering about seamlessness.
I sat down my daughter. She's 13, turning into a teenager, so she's actually 48. And we went through the 3 things she can't do and the 1 thing she can do while she's under the roof, and I'm paying for until she hits 21. It's very hard as a parent because I've lived through the tribal tattoo madness, the scarring, the tubes in ears. Most of her uncles and aunties have these things, and so setting the boundaries and limits of what you can't have becomes more and more difficult. But we set on 3 that she's agreed to. She's not allowed amputation for fashion. I don't care what they say, you're keeping that finger. Right? She's not allowed symbiotic parasite. I don't care if it reduces your weight and it's a diet fad. No tapeworms for you. She's not allowed transparent skin, just in case it ever comes up. There are 3 things that I decided as a father were not going to happen. And then we discussed the thing that we were allowed to have, and the thing that we do, we've universally agreed, she can have an additional frontal lobe. We would agree to that. And that's because the frontal lobe's probably where we're going to hit the barrier of how fast we can go. And so if there's a new frontal lobe, I'm all for it.
So it seems like there's a general agreement here or a comfort level with cognitive augmentation. Does that also extend to physical augmentation? What about a robot arm that is much better than your natural arm?
I'm all for it. Batman at the age of 90 has an exoskeleton to allow him to continue to operate in DC Comics written in the 1990s. I want one of those.
Again, that is happening, like with surgical robots. That's what's happening. We've given these doctors now new hands.
Right. Okay, next question.
This is really a question in 2 parts. The first part is for Dr. Hacker, and then the second part is for the rest of the panel. You had said that you weren't sure whether the future holds that everybody will learn multiple languages or whether we'll all be speaking English. What if it's none of the above? What if translators and the cloud and devices are so efficient that nobody needs to learn anything but 1 language? So you lose, or we lose, the ability to learn about translation. So my part B for the rest of the panel is, every time we gain something, we are potentially losing a skill. And I'm not the last Luddite, but is anyone paying attention to that?
Actually, I can say something which sort of came up before, is that so some people thought about fading boundaries between disciplines and so on, but I think, as you said, if you gain something, you might lose something. I would like everybody to gain something in which they are experts and then still be able to talk to each other. I think that's really the important thing, because I would not want that everybody becomes a doctor, or I would not want to be operated by somebody who just like a few years ago was actually a dancer or somebody. I don't know what people feel about that, but so I think having your individual characteristics, but at the same time being able to talk to each other, which is same as going by what the language issue you said. Everybody could have their own language, but maybe we can just understand each other through devices. And I don't see that as, that's one way we can go.
I think
I sort of contradicted a few people here.
I think with every technology, you have the good effects and the bad effects, and we try to make sure that good effects outweigh the bad ones. I actually agree. I think that is a very realistic outcome, that that people won't need to learn another language, and that ability to translate will maybe go away. I guess my hope is that if we can learn much faster, people will actually learn much more. because they can learn it much faster. So if today you spend basically 20 some years just keeping up, just learning all the things that all the previous generations have found out. If we can reduce that, I think we can build a better world.
Will there always be learning, or will we just learn how to interface with the great Google wizard for all of the answers in the world?
That's, I guess, the other question with the brain augmentation. If we had that, maybe we don't need to learn at all. I don't know.
One of the interesting things, and Emma probably knows something about this as well, that I found fascinating is, particularly in emerging economies, the rise of incredible diversity of coded languages, mixtures of different languages, particularly online. And it just seems to hint towards a future where we have many, many more languages, human languages, than we do now. I don't know if you have noticed the same thing, particularly in kind of online texting and so on.
You get these sort of mixtures.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to comment on that, but I was going to comment that I'm sympathetic to, I think with all technologies there's potential and downsides, but I think that we have so far to go still, at least in education, and the role for computers to play in augmenting, speeding education, that I'm not worried about it anytime soon. And in particular, Saul Kahn was here of the Khan Academy a few months ago, and he made a comment which I thought was really amazing, which was, he was saying that I think it was in the 14th century, that people thought that most people couldn't be literate. Maybe like 2% of people were capable of learning to read. And now we think that's ridiculous, right? Everyone is capable of learning to read, but maybe quantum physics is still 1% of people could do that. Most people can't do that at all. And I think that's likely because we just don't have very good ways of teaching it. And I think that his argument that resonated very strongly with me is that really all people are capable of learning almost everything. We just have to figure out the right ways to teach that. And I think we're so far from being able to do that I'm not worried about what we're losing in trying to get there yet.
Great. So let's see if we can blast through these last set of questions in the time we have available. Go ahead.
At the end of the 19th century, Hilbert made a list of problems that would occupy mathematicians for the next 100 years. And at the end of the 20th century, the Millennium Prize list was problems for mathematicians were made, of which one is a computer science problem. And so what are the problems that will occupy computer scientists for the next 25 years?
Wow,
a short list, maybe.
Yeah, very interesting. So any takers? Yeah.
I really want new battery tech. In all seriousness, you want something that will really help us? Make more batteries better, faster, lighter, longer, easier. If you can fix battery tech, we can change the world.
I have one, which is about having algorithms that can target different objectives you were talking about. And what if one objective is ethics and another is legal issues and another is your performance on something, right? We have been working on looking at statistical and say computational aspects for a long time, but we don't even know how to equate number of measurements with number of flops right now. So how do we go from, if you can't even do this, how do we go to equating ethics with risks or trade-offs and so on amongst different quantities here?
Here.
I think I had a good time because he said make batteries better. I work in battery industry. How to make batteries better for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my question is in a different area that maybe it would be interest of many people. I am originally Turkish. My wife is Korean. My son is born and grown here. He's 3 years old. The tactic we are following is maybe more a strategy. I only speak Turkish to him, and my wife is only speaking Korean. And we are hoping he's going to learn English from the surroundings. So hopefully he'll be smarter in the future. But what's happening is in the street, people usually try to speak English to him. And he cannot reply much yet. The second they try Chinese, still not. So I feel my son is depressed, even 3 years old. Would it be possible for a common person in the next 25 years, hopefully the help of the people here, to just look to a person and to understand what languages that person can speak?
Or be able to offer him translations. That's something which, or be able to offer him translations. That's something more realistic I can think of
I
rather
don't know, it
than.
could be a device, or it could be a person able to learn it by just, if I just look at you, how long time I should spend to know what languages you speak?
Well, I mean, I think we could already do that. Sorry, I was just gonna say we could already do that based on like vision recognition to do probabilistic estimates, but then that also has a big risk of stereotyping. So I think there's I mean, in some ways just go with the risk. I mean, we can do that. We can say statistically 95% chance he probably speaks Korean and Turkish based on, looking at his face analysis. But then what about kids that are adopted? What about all the other sort of surprising things? My mother-in-law is Filipino but speaks Armenian. So, there's a lot of surprising things that happen, and we could do it in averages, but maybe not for individuals.
Yeah, so what would be the limitations? Would it be hardware? Would it be more software? Would it be legal issues?
I think we could do it already. I mean, I think we could get it just using face recognition and using supervised learning. I think we could already do that.
This sounds like a great project for a graduate student.
There was actually there was this project for Google Glass that basically, when you walked around, it would just tell for every face you see. It's like this is Paul Barnett, based on like their it matches with like the Facebook profile or whatever. Now, if you can do that, and your profile has language, then you're done, right?
Let me just in order to get if we could go 1 or 2 minutes over, we can move and get just the last couple of questions.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
This one's geared towards you, Dr. Hacker. I really like your idea of there not having to go to school. Instead, we all learn on our own terms. But I know there are a lot of people that don't really love learning like I do. So you kind of got to make them learn, depending on how you look at it. But I feel your same frustration. I was in a situation where I was learning so much, thanks to people like you, specifically programming, all these things I wanted to learn, I could only learn at home. They didn't offer them where I learned. I'm a high school student right now. So what I did was I found an opportunity to get a diploma by leaving high school and going to my local community college. And that's what I'm doing right now, trying to come here. But why is it that I had to face that? I think, where could computer science go to change the classroom? Because I would love not to have to go to high school every day and learn my own, but I know that's not going to happen anytime soon. So where can we go, aside from just teachers having blackboards that are just more high-tech?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I really like this question. So when we think about education, we mostly think about, okay, you go, like, what does actually a university like CMU provide, or a high school? And we think, okay, that's where you go to learn. You get education from schools. That's what you do there. But actually, it's a bit more complicated, I think. In fact, I believe that schools and universities, they actually do 3 things. They teach, so you learn something, and the other thing they do is they do the accreditation. So they stamp, okay, you learned this, and then you can go as an employer and say, okay, you learned this, I'm going to hire you because you learned this. The third thing they do is actually they provide you with a social network. So I don't know how many people here met their spouse in high school or college. All these things, right? That thing we have not even touched. Like, for example, with Duolingo, we have not even touched. We're kind of close with like the accreditation. We can do something there. But like the whole social aspect of learning is a big open question. And I would love to solve that somehow through technology, but I don't have a good answer to that.
Wow, meet your spouse on Duolingo.com. So quickly here.
For a student who's interested in getting involved in some of the breakthroughs over the next 25 years and wants to contribute effectively, what advice would you give?
Great question.
Well, I think just be part of stuff. Like, I mean, if you're a student, be part of research. If you're not a student anymore, be part of the startups that are trying to change the space. So just take risks and try to be part of creating this next generation.
Thank you.
And finally.
Okay, so I know that you guys are interested in sort of education, and I know that different people learn in different ways, and that's been shown a lot, but I don't think there's been a lot of research done on like why it is or what it is about a particular person that causes them to learn best in one particular way. So I was interested, sort of, if you guys had any sort of insight on like in the future, or like using your guys' platforms such as Duolingo, like using that to sort of figure out why it is that people learn the way they do, just sort of on a more personal level as well, and sort of using that to personalize the education that that person gets.
Great question.
Yeah, so actually we do some parts of that already. Like when you start on Duolingo, when you start a lesson, that lesson is actually personalized to you. So it looks at, like what did you learn recently? We kind of like have a model of what you know and what you don't know. And we try to figure out, okay, the best thing to teach right now is this word and this sentence based on our model. And it's very personalized. And I think we're going to go way more there. So it's like, we kind of like, I'd say we're on the personalization level, we're like maybe 20% of where we want to be. But I think we can go much, much further. We can go like, basically the goal, I think, is something like a one-to-one tutor. So if you have ever had a private language teacher or like a private teacher of anything, what they do is they ask you, like, why do you want to learn this? And it's like, how much time do you have? And they create a plan, and they are like hyper personalized to you. And they see like, okay, you make this kind of mistake. Well, people who make this kind of mistake, I can give them this lesson and they will learn much faster. In fact, it has been shown that this one-to-one tutoring is actually way better than the normal classroom. And probably the reason is that it's very personalized, and that's where we want to go with Duolingo.
I think just to build on that, so exactly as everyone's saying, it's like 2 standard deviations better than standard classroom instruction, which is pretty amazing. But I think that I'm not sure computers are going to tell us why. So I think we're going to be able to do the personalization. In my lab, we certainly work on similar things, and we want also to be able to leverage experience from other students to improve experiences for other students, so to make personalization better across students. But we don't really have good theories of why. I mean, we can do it, and we can automate it, and we can have models of it, but I don't think that's really, I don't think we know internally what's happening in their brain or all of their past experiences that allow them to learn better in this way. It's just that we could optimize that, given we've observed that, how to improve it. But maybe
that
some
involves,
of the neuroscientists.
exactly, I was going to say that. That involves a talk between neuroscientists and computer scientists, right? So
it's interesting that you all have this theme of personalization as part of the future, and that does seem to be a very good part of what we're going to see. Now, with that, let me first please join me in thanking our great panelists. And then the last duty I think I have as moderator is to tell all of you that there is a reception on the 6th floor starting now. So see you all there. Thank you.